What would be wrong with that? That's the basis of several successful civilizations, to store things for bad times, to take care of their family and to look forward to the future and take care of even people that might not even be born yet, just by all of the actions and knowledge that you're passing on to your offspring when you yourself learn it and do it in front of them.
Investors could still see some of the strongest price action in gold this year, according to Wells Fargo, which sees signs of a developing rally. Money managers believe we could see inflation reach new levels that we have not seen since the Jimmy Carter era. For centuries, investors around the globe have turned to gold in times of economic uncertainty. Gold supplies have flipped from excessive to deficient, and such times in the past have sparked some of gold's strongest price rallies, unquote. Patriot Gold Group has the No Fee for Life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the No Fee for Life IRA. So go ahead and give the folks at Patriot Gold Group a call to discuss physical gold and silver. And the knowledge that Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 5 years in a row from 2016 until present. Click the link in the description box below for more information. And now on with the video. Yeah, those theorists, you know what I mean? I mean, geez, all they do is get like information and compare it and they come up with their own conclusion. We can't allow that.
I think people could, like with our technology, I think we could all live in caves, though, if you would get over the claustrophobia and if you realize we have to do this. Say you had good information that it would be 3 years before there was a summer. There was so much junk in the atmosphere from whatever caused it. Maybe it was a volcano, maybe a rock hit the earth, whatever it is. And you knew for a fact, I have to stay in here with my 25-year supply of storable goods here, and I have to drink this filtered water, and we're not going to get any sunlight, so we're going to have to daily dose ourselves with vitamin D, and you're going to just have to sit in there and look at the walls. Actually, a lot of people have done this. If you believe in people in space, they do it. And then there's also people that have been locked away for one reason or another and have had to learn how to do that at the will of nature. And then they were at the will of criminals. And then they were at the will of government. And that's not a place that you should ever want to be, ever.
Never, ever. Oh, and speaking of scales, if I got stuck down in a cave for 3 years, how many kilograms of mushrooms am I allowed to bring with me? Because staring at the wall down there, you see a lot of that during times of cataclysm and during times that people would run into environs that are, say, claustrophobic. Seems like they had a lot of huge, gigantic leaps in terms of reconnecting back to source and back to the river of consciousness.
Yeah, you would have to stay sane. But I have thought about that. And somebody told me today, that there's a new lifestyle on the verge of being created. And it has a saying already, screw this, I'm going to the hills. I'm tired of paying bills.
Solar's not going to work. You mentioned that right there. If we do get some sort of large volcanic eruption, which happens every grand solar minimum, I mean, these are on cyclical clockwork patterns of eruptions. Through history, if you look back, you can see the rise and the fall, at least in the smaller interim of collapse of economies across continents based on volcanic eruptions on the equator, your solar panels wouldn't produce either. So a lot of people who are relying singular on solar, you might want to think about a backup plan B. Like a greenhouse would be great. You could keep the volcanic ash off it, low light conditions, you could grow certain types of plants. But to heat it in the winter, if a lot of people are going to rely on solar to do that, you might have to think of something different. I mean, solar intake would be knocked down 90% on those kind of conditions you're talking about for 3 years. Plant life wouldn't do too well, but you'd probably have a lot of dead trees laying around you could heat with. And if you some way you could get that to blow into your greenhouse using heating, you could probably find a 55-gallon oil drum and convert that into a wood-burning stove to pump heat into your greenhouse. We can either get reset or we can all reject. So why don't we, instead of call it the Great Reset, where we all seem to be the victim of these elitists trying to play God on this planet, Why don't we just say we all reject everything that they're doing, because the power's with the numbers. And, a lot of people have forgotten that. If we all want to say no, stop, there's no way anybody can enforce anything. Because when I look at cryptocurrencies as one of the antidotes to a lot of this, Ethereum has now eclipsed Walmart in market cap value. So it seems to be a trend. I know it's a corporate thing at the moment where a lot of corporations are using their excess cash on the balance sheet to purchase crypto to drive the price, to also allow corporations to seemingly make profit in a dead economy world. It's almost like the world's being tricked on a balance sheet now by corporations buying huge amounts of crypto to show a positive balance to make their stock worth more. So we're kind of in this conundrum circle of things for the next few years at least. But I do believe we should just opt out and say no more. I really think we should say no more. We need problem, rejection, our own solution, versus that whole problem, reaction, solution. Their problem, our rejection, our own solutions. And this is the way I think we need to start heading down the direction, is to change the mind frame to we reject what's coming out that's not good for our minds, for our bodies, for our spirits, for our countries, for our children.
I do agree with you about saying no. I just think that there's only one reality problem with saying no, is that if everybody decides to say no, they're choosing to kind of go down that path. And that path is not an easy one. The people that are used to you bowing and folding to them are not going to take kindly to you saying no. And every time anybody ever has actually said no and demanded or declared that they have their own rights, hard times follow after that. And people have to be prepared for that also. But you are correct that there's only one way things ever stop, as far as anything I've ever read in history, and that is when a large amount of people decide that they want to opt out of whatever it is that they're dealing with. And then you have the AI to deal with, that's kind of the intermediary between the authoritarians and the peasants. Now at this point, we're there. But it's a necessary evil to eventually say no to certain things. After all, we are just an animal, and every animal will fight for its survival when finally backed into a corner.
For some time, until it was squandered again with the ease of life. So what do you see coming then? Okay, you've been pretty knock on different events you saw coming in the future, the way society might morph and bend. Can you look into your crystal ball and give us another 2 to 3, maybe 5 years out? What are you seeing out there? And I know you can't go as deep and big as you want, because we're live streaming on YouTube right now, 420 TV Freedomist Film, 1776.
In my crystal ball, I see massive reduction in population, and they're going to blame it on a series of calamities and problems. However, this was already coming at this point, and I think it's really bizarre. Wrap your head around this. It seems like almost everything always is to design. So whenever you do the math, and then you listen to the propaganda on one side about overpopulation, but then you do the math, and you realize that, in fact, mathematically, with no calamities and no external inputs, the population was already going to plateau and start dropping. And I'll tell you why. It's a fact that people are not having the same amount of children. They're having less than, like one. In America, I think right now it's like 1.1 birth rate now at this point. So we're barely even replacing one parent, much less having any population growth. And at the same time, we have an aged population, meaning that less new people were born compared to the old people that are alive now. And unfortunately, because of that, vacuum of population is going to happen when people 60 and above just disappear soon. And then on top of that, let's start talking about the external factors like environmental pollution, governmental restrictions in certain places, lack of food and resources in other places, culture that has decided that reproducing yourself is not the way, and instead the opposite is now trendy and what you're supposed to be doing.
I'll agree and layer over with you on the food shortages inbound here. With the sun going through its changes that are affecting now in earnest. Like everybody on the earth can see that these changes are here. Now, whether you want to put the full causation on human activity, or if you want to do a combination of sun-driven, and I also believe human-driven, there's a combination there of, it's not 100% the sun either, it's not 100% CO2 either, human-based, there's somewhere in the middle there. And it's probably erring on, 95% the sun's changes electromagnetically, and then we are also polluting and putting plastics in the oceans and all these things that are nasty in the food chain that are also, affecting the human physical body, the meat suit, if you will. So these food shortages are inbound, and I'm going to speak from experience. I have been ridiculed for preparations on the food sides of things. You're going to have to step past that. And in your mind, just accept it that people don't understand. They're stuck in the normalcy bias. And that's cool. You got to lump the normalcy bias people in with whatever you would feel that, okay, well, they're stuck mentally in the place that they think everything's going to be that. Maybe that's a safety mechanism for a lot of people, that they need to remain in that same place of safety and they can't deal with external things that are going to be going on in their lives. That's fine. But when you get ridiculed because you're trying to prepare too much, or trying to do too much, why don't you take a break? You're working too hard right now. You're trying to get the greenhouses up, get the beehives out, get the orchard up, doing all these other things, getting the gravel road in, getting the well in, doing all this, putting hoses down the sides of the creeks to try to harvest rainwater, building a pond, putting all the extra fields in the back, all this stuff. You're working too hard. You need to take a break. No, I don't need to take a break. I need to work probably twice as hard as I am because I'm not doing enough right now. But the more you prepare, and I'm telling you just from experience, the more you prep out and the more you get ready for self-sufficiency, the more pushback you're going to get the closer you get to that. Well, I can't handle your reality, because if I deal with your reality in the future, that might be food shortages, I can't deal with my own reality of the cognitive bias of everything's going to remain the same. Hey, the supermarkets, not going to get that more expensive. You don't need to buy it today. You can wait for another 1 or 2 or 3 months. It won't get that more expensive. Things are going up exponentially. Things are completely out of stock, and waiting another 2 months is not an option. So you're going to start running into this again and again and again when you come into your own preps. So anybody out there, prep more, prep double, get what you can, cans food, learn how to grow food. And it's all about the food. You control society with food. You control families with the food. This is the things that's toppled empires in the past. And no, you can't eat storable foods for 3 years living in a cave because you'll get sick. There's too much sodium in it. When there's good times, you can grow fresh veggies, kind of mix that in with what your stores are. And while the fresh veggies are in season, like now in the summer, eat as much fresh food as you can. Rely on the storable foods later on, or add something in there to try to, what you bought so far, kind of use it up and then, restock it for a later goodbye date.
I think that's really bizarre that you say that. I mean, I know it's factual. They know that you're doing something that's worthwhile, but what bothers me is, who cares if you don't believe that some kind of problem, catastrophe, or whatever's happening? Maybe you don't even believe, that that's going to happen. What would be wrong with forming your culture, and I mean that literally, your culture around prepping so that it doesn't ever matter what happens? You're always ready. You're the people that are ready. You're the people whose kids are ready. You're the people whose grandkids will be ready. What would be wrong with that? That's the basis of several successful civilizations, to store things for bad times. If you think about it, if everybody was living in the same fashion, there wouldn't be such a blow to civilization every time something bad did happen. It would be just like par for the course. Everybody would just go, oh, well, we'll just do this, we'll do that, and we'll get by. And not only that, their children and their grandchildren were already on the same trip. Now, I know that we've already gone through the cycle, like you said, and I forgot there's a name specifically for the cycle of gaining one's independence, becoming successful, and then becoming dependent. I forgot what the name of it is, but it always circles around back.
Is that the fourth turning, or that's more of an economic sphere of thing? It relates right into the fourth turning, but I know there's a specific label for that, how society does that ebb and flow.
But see, you in that flow once your culture is based on producing abundance, going back to nature, having a connection with earth where you and the earth are doing well at the same time. And the earth will take care of you when the earth is sick. I mean, think about it. It's just like having any other farm animal, except for the farm animal is you and Earth. And as long as you parasitically get along, so to speak, and become a symbiote organism, that's what we're here for. All the religions kind of start out that way, that we're here to cultivate the earth. So I don't see why it's so bizarre that we got to a place where people are bucking the norm to be agrarian, bucking the norm to be prepared, bucking the norm to have abundance, bucking the norm to teach other people. Group of moms that have got together and they're teaching each other things like canning foods. Their group publicly says they believe that there will be supply chain problems and food distributions issues, and that there will be a lack of food. So they're preparing on how to can foods, how to garden, how to do, all of the stuff that we talk about, liberating women in the ultimate feminism by teaching them to protect themselves, to take care of themselves, to take care of their family, and to look forward to the future and take care of even people that might not even be born yet, just by all of the actions and knowledge that you're passing on to your offspring when you yourself learn it and do it in front of them. And I think that's what really scares the authoritarians, is I think there's a lot more people than you think that are on the same trip as we are about looking into the future. So it's really bizarre that anytime you do something good or normal, that there's so much pushback.
Corporate media is really good at getting people to alienate into their own group of like, everybody else is doing, I'm not. Everybody else must be thinking like the corporate media wants them to think. So everything, the way I look at the media now, is kind of a black and white on the opposite of the information I'm being fed, because it seems as if literally everything is 180-degree opposite. If they're telling you you can't grow your own food anymore, to take a chicken that you've raised out of your backyard and committed some atrocity against an animal, and unless it died a natural death, you can't get food. We've gone into so far off la land here that this is a non-human entity controlling this planet, or trying to. The consciousness flow seems to be tapping everybody in. We're in a universal consciousness. And I think for survival mechanism, a lot of people are thinking that, move with your feet, vote with your feet, get out to the countryside, get out with your bills, off to the hills. That is something that is so ancient, ingrained in our DNA. This vibration frequency change in the sun is activating a lot of people's ancient DNA strands of memory. It's intuitive now. The unified field of God itself.